All right, you might have to accept that. I'm not sure about the settings on this. All right, everyone. I hope you all are well. I'm joining you all from Fresno, California, where it is extremely hot. How are y'all doing? Where are you joining from?
I'm in the Charleston, South Carolina area. It's Ajana Claire.
Beautiful. Nice to meet you.
This is Cherie. I am in South Florida, just north of Fort Lauderdale. So I feel you on the hot. It's very hot here.
Very nice. And you have humidity too. We're lucky enough not to have any
Yes,
humidity. We
near
just,
100% humidity.
oh no, oh no. Well, you're near the water, right? You have that advantage.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
we'll take it. We'll take it. Great. Thank you. All right. Anyone else want to chime in?
Hi, this is Chanel. I'm in Philadelphia, and our heat wave just broke, so it's cool here. Thank God.
Wonderful. My old stomping grounds, Philly. Hey. I lived in Philadelphia for about 5 years, actually. Had my son there. So I call him a Philadelphian, even though he's grown up mostly in California. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you can still see the slides. If not, if anything's cuckoo, just let me know as we go. I really thank you all. Thanks for your patience today. Thank you to the Hughes Society for having me. I think I've been a member since the inaugural cohort, or maybe the second to inaugural cohort of the Hughes Society, and it's afforded me some great opportunities, including a scholarship to complete my WSET 1, and then to recently complete my WSET 2 with distinction. I think last year or a year or so ago. So I'm very thankful to the Hughes Society and for all the community it creates for events like this. And if any of you have participated in one of my surveys, in an interview, otherwise supported me, I just want to thank you all as well. If you have not had the chance, on the screen now, you should see 2 QR codes. So if you are identifying as a Black wine consumer, you can definitely participate in the survey on the left side of the screen. You can go ahead and use your phone to snap that if you identify as Black and you consume wine. If you also have your own wine business, whether that's being a wine educator, having a wine brand, if you consult, you're a sommelier, you can also participate in the entrepreneur survey, and that's on the right side of the screen. After this, if you have any questions for me or you want to reach out, I'm at Instagram at the Wyne Belle with an E on the end, even though my last name does not have an E on the end. And email is thewynebelle@gmail.com. So you can always reach me through those channels, and I hope you will participate in the surveys. I'll show them again later on, just in case you miss it. If you're interested in the study that I'll be talking about today, it's available here. Just go to payhip.com, and again, just Wyne Belle at the end of that address will take you to the 2023 report. The 2020 report is also there for you as well. So the topic of today's discussion has racial inclusion improved in the wine industry since 2020? And so I will, before I dive into it, I'll turn it over to you and ask you to chime in. You can either shout it out, raise your hand, or just enter it into the text. But what are your thoughts on that? If you had to think back from 2020, I know there was a ton going on, but if you think about from 2020 until now, do you feel like racial inclusion has improved in the wine industry? And that can be from a consumer perspective, if you're a professional in the wine industry as a professional, whether you're an entrepreneur from that perspective. Does anyone want to voice their thoughts on that? Or either, again, you can type it in the chat if you're a little shy like me. Anyone? Mum is the word, I guess. Does anyone weigh in on that? Thank you, Chanel. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so restaurants and social experiences are still lacking, but there has been some progress. I would agree with that. Thank you, Chanel. Anyone else wants to? Okay, you haven't been in the industry long enough to say. Definitely understand that. Anyone else? Okay, well, we will get to um, my thoughts on that by the end of the presentation, but I want to take us through just kind of what led up to where we are today. And it's interesting, I actually gave this talk at an event, national, perhaps international wine industry conference. And the technician who was in there, he saw the title of the talk and he said, well, why are you talking about since 2020? And that's when I knew that we live in very different worlds. The gentleman happened to be a white man. And he's like, why are you talking about race since, what's so special about, I don't understand, 2020? And I'm like, were you not there? Like, I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to kind of be flippant and, kind of just have a attitude immediately. So I just, explained, since the racial protests, George Floyd's death, et cetera, just kind of taking a look at that as a line of demarcation for us. And so I don't know if he understood after that, but that's what I told him. All right, so just to give you just a very, very brief background on what inspired me to start looking into the area of inclusion in the wine industry, it was really motivated by a birthday social outing, going back to, thank you, Cherie. So going back to 2017, very happenstance, just, wanted to get away from Fresno and celebrate my birthday, and wound up going to Oakland for the Black Vines Festival. And I didn't really have a connection to wine before that. But I thought it was just really amazing to hear from some of those folks, some who even owned land to be able to grow wine grapes and produce wine, whether they were just, I won't say just, whether they had a wine brand, were doing private label, things like that. I was just enthralled and I wanted to know everything that I could about how we are, definitely showing up in the wine space. And at that time, there was very limited coverage about, Black entrepreneurs, Black consumers when it came to wine. And I'm in the academic world, so there was no academic studies or journal articles published about this topic. There was, in fact, one study, and it had just been published in 2014. So less than 11 years ago was the first study published, of record on Black wine consumers. So it shows you how much is lacking when it comes to academic research, like taking this seriously as a stream of inquiry, trying to understand more about inclusion in the wine industry. So that's what really got me interested, was just attending the Black Vines Festival. Has anyone been to the festival, the Black Vines Festival in Oakland and other places now? I know that they're moving around a bit. So one key, yes, you have to go. You got to get out there. I don't know, Cherie, you might have just told me where you're from, where you live. I don't know. But it's typically in Oakland every year during February. It's usually during my birthday, last weekend of February. It's a wonderful time. Yes, come out, please. Let me know if you do. I will make my way up there to see you. All right, so one of the tenets of the Black Vines Festival is this idea of Black joy. I know I don't have to explain this to this audience, but sometimes, again, when I'm in these different spaces, Black joy is a new concept for them. And just you can see kind of the summary of what it is: an act of resistance against control and trauma, rebellion through revelry. It can be organized or organic and spontaneous. It can happen alone. You can experience this sense of Black joy on your own or in community. And what's kind of tickling me about this Black joy, this happens, I just was on social media briefly and saw that today is the anniversary of the Brawlgate. What are we calling it? the hat flip and the chair.
Oh, I'll come off mute for that. Yes, the brawl in Birmingham, the folding chair. Let's do it. We love it.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, that was kind of coerced Black joy that came out of that. We weren't expecting that to occur, but hey, we'll take it. And again, I don't have to explain this to this audience, but again, sometimes in different spaces, they say, well, I can implicitly see them thinking or even explicitly saying, why is it Black joy? Why isn't it this joy? Why aren't we all the same? Don't all lives matter? You know where I'm going with this. But just to give you some statistics, in the Black community in America, we have a 3 times the maternal mortality rate than other races. Let's make sure we get Alexandra in here. Nearly 5 times the incarceration rate, 25% more likely to have our business loans rejected. Only 2% of wine professionals identify as Black, and less than 1% of wineries have Black ownership. And kind of just to give an example of Black joy, I shared this image and video of Black men frolicking. I don't remember if y'all remember that trend, but just as an example of Black joy. And we also kind of focus on Black joy and look for those moments of rebellion through revelry, because racism permeates our society, particularly in the United States. And so that doesn't leave any space really untouched, including retail spaces. So I've shared just a few headlines. Another one from another old stomping grounds of mine, Baltimore. You can see the headline there: Towson Wine and Spirit owner calls Black customer racial slur on camera. And this isn't 10 years ago, it's not 5 years ago, it's just in 2023. Also, you may have heard about the initial incident on the Napa Valley wine train with the Black Women's Book Club that got kicked off for being too loud. They then filed a discrimination lawsuit and got settlements. But now the Napa Valley wine train is now trying to rebrand, which includes having more inclusive and representative staff. So just to make the point that racism shows up everywhere, and retail spaces, wine spaces are not at all excluded from that. There was also the case with Jonathan Butler. I think this was maybe about a year ago when that occurred again in Napa. All right, so let's go back to 2020, just thinking about where we were then. Global pandemic, this virus that really no one quite understood or could have really foretold the gravity, the impact that it would have on all of us. This was accompanied, kind of overlaid with a series of deaths of unarmed Black citizens by police, really culminating with the video recorded murder of George Floyd, which then spawned civil unrest. All right, so that's kind of the context of when I was conducting my initial study. At the same time, we saw consumer activism. It began really as a Buy Black campaign. And I want to add that, this type of consumer activism is not new. We've seen it from the civil rights era, and even before then, I'm sure. But when we couldn't be hired at particular department stores, we wouldn't shop there. We would have boycotts. And so this idea of really being intentional with your dollars, spending it with Black owners and entrepreneurs, it's a tactic, it's a kind of act or movement that we've done in many different situations. What's added this time, of course, is social media. where we're able to share that message more widely. And so there was the Buy Black social media movement. So kind of just attaching that to your messaging and pointing out Black-owned businesses. Thank you, Chanel. Get in touch anytime. And so that kind of translated or kind of morphed into a Drink Black campaign, which we saw online. And you had folks like the McBride sisters who were identifying not only their brand as a Black-owned winery, but also naming 66 other brands that could be supported. So it was a great way to see how it translated from this overall general Buy Black movement, particularly to Drink Black, thinking about Black wine and other alcohol brands. To kind of encapsulate that, I have a quote from one of the folks that I interviewed, and it reads, "People were just buying more wine, and now I have enough money to bring in more inventory. It was one of those things that just kept going." All right. So now my slides will not keep going. Okay, so next question for you all. How many Black-owned wine brands have you tried? And which has been your favorite so far? Anyone, you can type it in the chat or you can shout it out if you'd like. How many Black-owned wine brands do you think you've tried? And which has been your favorite so far? Thank you, Cherie. Lafette, Brown Estate. Thank you, Nia. Great. Anyone else? Yeah, so I think, oh wow, 20 to 30, Chanel. Well, you're our expert then. Maison Noir. Great. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Glad to hear that. So again, thinking back to 2020 or shortly thereafter, we saw all of these corporate commitments to inclusion, to diversity, DEI, DEIA, because we forget that accessibility portion of that whole term. But scholarships, $50 billion in pledges. You know, we were really getting a spotlight on this issue of inclusion in wine, not only wine, of course, but there were some more targeted wine efforts as well. So while we're talking about DEIA, you know, I love this quote from Arthur Chan that reads, "Diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is the outcome." Right? So as a nation, in many business settings, diversity is a fact because we're not just limiting diversity to race, even though that's what my talk is about. We know that diversity encompasses so many different characteristics that we can embody, right? Does anyone want to shout out or either type in, what do we mean? What's a factor? What's something that can be used to identify us, to identify diversity? So race is one thing, right? We can be different according to our race. What are some other ways that diversity shows up in, you know, any group of people, any organization, in business? What are some other ways? Yes, thank you. Abilities, gender, right. Anyone else have anything they want to add? We also think about age. Now, sexual orientation. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Language. There's so many ways that we're different. So many ways that each of us can bring value to an organization, to a community, through aspects of ourselves that may be different from someone else. And it's, again, not just race, which is interesting that it seems to just become the default that DEI relates to race. But so many people beyond people of color have benefited from what we've been calling DEI or DEIA. So it's really heartbreaking to see what's happening today. Of course, when we started off this year and continuing through today, we've seen this administration really go after DEI and anything related to it, really, pretty blatantly, no longer hiding it under the guise of anything, but just, blatantly going after it for their own purposes. All right, so you can see some of the headlines there. And so all of this action is really personal to me, particularly back in January when the governor of Texas threatened the Texas A&M president's job because Texas A&M was supporting an organization called the PhD Project. The PhD Project is a consortium it was initially led by the accounting industry, the big four accounting firms, most heavily KPMG. And they wanted to see more people of color at the front. I'm sorry, they wanted to see more people of color that were ready to be hired by these accounting firms. So they took this kind of long-term view. Well, if we want to see more people of color who are trained accountants, who are studying accounting, graduating and joining our firms, then they probably need to see someone in the front of the classroom who represents them. And so they thought they wanted to change it systemically, right? So they thought if we can get existing kind of middle career business professionals interested in getting their PhD and becoming professors, that in turn would inspire more students of color to pursue business degrees and ultimately be ready to be hired at these firms, right? So really, really innovative, really thinking outside of the box when it comes to this notion of pipeline, because that's something that we hear, right? Well, we just don't know where to find them. We don't know where these skilled people of color are, right? We always hear that. So KPMG, along with the other accounting firms, started the PhD project to say, well, we're going to have people who are dedicated, who believe in supporting business students and getting them prepared to be able to be a part of our firm. And that's how we'll, diversify our ranks. So I personally have been a beneficiary of the PhD project. Now, the PhD project doesn't give you any money. It's not a scholarship. It gives you a network. It exposes you to what life is like as a PhD, as a professor. It exposes you to the number of challenges and hardships that may come along with giving up your life, going back to school from 4 to 5 to 6 years, and then becoming a professor, going through the tenure process. So they keep it real, but they're also very inspiring about it. And since the PhD project has been in place, we've seen a 6-fold increase in historically underrepresented business PhDs since they began in 1994. All right. And I said this was personal to me because I was only considered becoming a professor because of the PhD project. And you can see in that photo, my son, who I had to kneel down to look him eye to eye, now I have to look up. He's a tall 15-year-old. But it just goes to show the power of organizations like that. And now these very organizations that have been so impactful are being threatened, decimated, all of those things. All right, so one more question. Has your job, income, education, any other aspect of your life been affected by the DEIA backlash? Hopefully not, but.
I will come off mute to say this. Yes, it has. They have recently uh, found a way to get rid of the only other, besides myself, Black vice president in the company, a couple of others in lower leadership positions. They've eliminated their positions. We used to have a cultural affinity group of which I was a part where we, try to they begrudgingly they allowed us to have it, and we would try to do different things around DEIA.
Mhm.
Again, not focused on one culture or not. I mean, it's
Mhm,
everything that we've talked about here, abilities, gender, all of it. And they put the kibosh on that as well.
mhm,
I was actually told that our clients don't care about that. We need to stop talking about it.
mhm,
So yes, it's definitely, and it's untrue. Some of my clients are, federal government. So again, before we had this regime shift, the federal
mhm,
government was very, very interested in
mhm,
DEIA. My mom worked at the Pentagon, and was a part of, the the DEI and the
mhm,
discrimination administration. So
mhm,
that is very much something that the federal government used to care very much about. But
mhm,
the backlash has been swift and severe, and it
mhm,
is very, very hard now to keep those programs going, even flying under the radar. So
mhm,
yeah, so it's
mhm.
definitely my income has not been, but certainly my job and how I go about my job as a
Yeah,
recruiter it has changed it quite a bit.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Sherry. And I'm Sherry or Cherie. I'm sorry.
So it's
Cherie.
Cherie. It's Cherie.
Cherie.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Cherie. And I'm
Sure.
so, I'm very sorry to hear that. And since I think you mentioned a parent is in the Pentagon, I'm sure that has to be taxing for them to be in this environment. Um, so yeah,
Well,
I'm very
she's passed on, so
okay.
she's not in, there still. But yeah, it
Okay.
was during that heyday though when it was just so robust, where they really,
Mhm,
there every kind of affinity group you can imagine the federal
mhm,
government had, and so
mhm.
it really was a different place to work back then.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, and I mean, even if it, for most of us, even if it doesn't affect you directly and personally, maybe someone in your family, a friend, a classmate, colleague, you know, yeah, it's pretty devastating. All right. Okay, we're already at 5:05, so I'm going to go a little bit faster here. This is just background on how I conducted the studies. The first one, as I mentioned, really got rolling in the late spring, early summer of 2020. I was tasked, I had a sabbatical to do this. So unfortunately or unfortunately, I got a sabbatical for fall 2020. um, there was I guess the silver lining is I was able to engage with so many folks because we all were kind of at home and available. And I only needed really for my study to interview about 8 to 10 people. That's kind of, I guess you could say, rigorous enough to be publishable. Um, but once I started meeting with folks and hearing their stories, and again, I should say these folks are entrepreneurs, Black wine entrepreneurs. So those who identify as Black and who have a wine business. The majority of the folks who I spoke with were winemakers or owner of wine brands, but there were, kind of wine adjacent professions, businesses, I should say, as well, whether that was media, education, events, media, so sort of these kind of adjacent roles as well. I wound up speaking with more than 40 of those folks in really kind of a 2 to 3 month span. And really, I was only expected and only intended to speak to 8. But once I got going, I was just compelled to keep talking, keep reaching out. I would get introduced to the next person. And I was just compelled. I wanted to hear all of the stories. Around the same time, I also distributed a survey, and that got about 70 responses. Um, I then published the first report called Terroir Noir in 2021. Then 2 years later, I didn't do the interviews again. I'm still hoping to do that. But I did do another survey, and again, about 70 or so answers, which I then published the results in the 2023 report. So my key questions in my research were: what motivates Black wine business owners? What challenges have they experienced? And what were their marketing strategies? Also, as an add-on, which again, I couldn't have anticipated, but I was able to inquire about the pandemic and its effects on their businesses, as well as the racial reckoning that was happening simultaneously. Again, I'm preaching to the choir here, but the thought may pop up, well, why do Black wine entrepreneurs matter? Why are we focused in and targeted on this particular segment? I think this quote by Jackie Summers, who founded Sora Liquor, really sums it up. In this country where a lot of drink culture is owed to Blackness, very little of it is owned by Blackness, right? So in so many areas, we as both Black consumers, Black producers, are trendsetters, really driving the culture, but yet very little of the rewards of ownership are attributed to us or are available to us. So just briefly on the 2020 study results, most of the respondents were female, so Black females. The majority, again, were wine producers, so more than 40% were. 80% were self-funded, meaning they started their business based upon their own savings, family and friends. Oops. They were all over the US. I initially was just going to focus on California because that's convenient to me, but they were all over the US, places like Texas, Maryland, Florida at the time. And I think where else, but all over the US. That was something that was surprising to me, that we weren't just limited to what you would think of as your typical US wine regions. Almost half were family businesses, meaning that they were working with either a spouse or some other relative as part of their business. And then only about half, I guess it's kind of a half full, glass half empty scenario, depends how you look at it, but 50% were profitable in the past year. All right, so some key insights. The first is that the respondents had diverse paths to wine, meaning some were retirees and it had just always been their dream to have a winery or have a wine brand. Others were young folks just graduating college and getting into the wine game with wine brands. Lots of different career backgrounds, whether it was education, legal, attorneys showed up a lot in this space. Just a lot of different paths. There wasn't just one, linear path or one dedicated path I could say that the respondents followed. They came from all different backgrounds, again, all over the US, different ages, and different backgrounds related or expertise related to wine and business as well. So that's one aspect. Secondly, that a common theme was that they were persisting through challenges across the board. With any venture, any business venture, of course, there's going to be challenges. Wine as an industry is particularly challenging because it's a product that's highly regulated and it's a very capital intensive venture. So it takes a lot of money, capital, to get a wine business going in most cases. And so they were all persisting through their challenges though. None of them seemed to have a defeatist attitude. They were just going full throttle with their businesses. And then another common theme that emerged was that this idea of philanthropy and corporate social responsibility. I think you may experience this as part of our culture yourselves. There's always this notion of needing to give back. So it's not just that I get ahead and then, you figure it out on your own, those of you behind me. No, there's really this sense of needing to give back, whether that was through mentorship, whether that was through borrowing equipment, allotting space on your land or your property, and also reaching outward externally to the community. So just making sure that their work, the revenue that they were generating was going back into their communities. And that's something that really stood out. I sometimes work with non-Black co-authors or researchers or scholars, and they're always surprised by that. That there's this notion you just don't get ahead and then just forget everybody behind you. It's not like, in most cases, it's not this cutthroat thing of just, well, I made it, so you figure it out. No, typically what I heard from our respondents anyway, is that there's always this idea of mentorship, giving back, helping the next person. So that's interesting. All right. Just to give you, again, I said I did interviews as well as surveys. So the interviews are really, really rich. I only intended to spend about 30 minutes per interview, but some of these interviews went on for almost 3 hours. It was just deep. I mean, it was a time where a lot was going on. It was almost like a therapy session, probably for the both of us, to be on and talking about all of these issues that were happening. So you can see some of the quotes here. This sense of survivor's guilt, even though she wasn't related to George Floyd. This experience of, now all of these corporations, even consumers, are paying attention to me now because I'm a Black-owned wine brand. But why did someone have to die in order for me to get this attention, right? So there was this sense of survivor's guilt, right? You can see another quote there as well. All right, but kind of on a lighter note, there was this optimism. About 90% of respondents, again, this is in 2020, said they were more optimistic about the future of their businesses versus the prior year. And another subject of my interview stated, what I don't want to do is become a trend. We have to hold these companies accountable to say, look, Black businesses do matter, right? So kind of as we were moving from 2020 to 2021, there was this optimism. It seemed like, this was finally going to be the time that things turned around, that people were engaging, that they saw it with their own eyes, right? So there was this optimism there. All right, so moving on to 2023, I had a lot of the same questions. I kind of wanted to validate or see if anything had changed between 2020, 2023. And just see, what were the repercussions, since at that point we were 3 years out from the initial start of both the pandemic as well as the racial protests. So things are pretty consistent when it came to these Black wine entrepreneurs' motivations. Again, about 70% were motivated to start their business in order to improve the industry, right? So there was really this drive to make a shift in the industry, to make it more inclusive by themselves showing up and providing opportunities and engaging consumers of color. They were also influenced by having this sense of autonomy, so that they were going to be self-directed. They would own their business. They would be kind of the masters of their own fate versus being in more of a corporate setting and having to work for someone else. Also, this idea of building a legacy came out several times, that they wanted to have something that they could pass on to their family, or either generating this intergenerational wealth for their family. And then simply the passion that they just love wine. And so being able to work in wine, have a business in wine, didn't seem like work necessarily. Almost all of them saw their businesses as extensions of themselves. So it was really personal to them. And the majority promoted their business as Black owned. And that is an option. You can come into the marketplace and really be loud and proud about your heritage, that it's Black owned, or you may not. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with either path. That's up to you and how you want to promote yourself, how you want to market yourself, who you want to engage. But in my study, about 80% really did identify their businesses as being Black owned and promoted them as such. Let's see, so you can see between 2020, that's that first kind of I don't know, dark purple, I guess. And 2023 is the more bright purple on the right side. You can see that when they were asked about the biggest obstacles for success for Black wine entrepreneurs, in both years, capital was number one, just getting funding, access to funding. In 2020, actually racism or bias showed up as number two. And then distribution was number three. That changed for 2023. Capital stayed the number one challenge, but distribution moved to number two. And then bias or racism showed up in the number three spot, right? So not much movement there. When asked about DEI, and again, this is in 2023, before it became this pejorative word, when they were asked if their business had directly benefited from DEI efforts by the wine industry, we saw some growth there. 56% of respondents in 2020 agree with that statement, and that moved up to 65% in 2023. When they were asked about inclusion efforts, with the statement, the wine industry is taking meaningful action to increase inclusion for either Black entrepreneurs, Black consumers, or Black professionals. You can see the results here. Unfortunately, all of them decreased in 2023. So this perception of inclusion by the industry actually saw decreases almost 3 years post 2020. So getting back to our original question, has racial inclusion improved in the wine industry? I would answer that by saying yes, no, and not significantly enough. One thing that we need to be more definitive about, I think, which would definitely give some more kind of granular view or granular results, is what are we saying when we say the wine industry? That's such a, you know, ambiguous term that could encompass so many different, you know, small mom and pop wineries, big corporation, global, you know, corporations, the more nonprofit and grassroots like the Hughes Society. So I think I would need to be a little bit more specific when I'm asking about, you know, what the wine industry is doing, because if you take a look at some of the nonprofits and grassroots organizations, again, like Hughes Society, Roots Fund, et cetera, they're definitely making a shift. They're making a difference. When you look at some of the larger corporations, however, particularly now post, you know, inauguration day of this year, there's definitely differences. So we need to have some more fine tuning about what we mean by the wine industry. And I think that will give us a clearer picture. Again, attention on and investments in inclusion are waning. There's a full-on assault, as you all see, on DEI funding and initiatives. Just really this coercive push to anything that's related to DEI in any segment. I'm in academia. You think that would be like the last bastion of, you know, free will, free thought. I do happen to be in California, so I feel a little bit fortunate there, but I don't think any organization, any system is safe from what's happening now as far as all of the demands that are being made. So a bright spot is that there are opportunities to engage younger and multicultural consumers. And younger consumers are very, very demanding about inclusion. So I think if we turn anywhere, it's going to be the younger folks who are going to have to be demanding this change that we want to see. I'll just talk briefly about consumers. About 12% of US wine consumers are Black. This is from the Wine Market Council. They recently came out with another study, so I have to get updated. But about 12% of US wine consumers are actually Black. I thought that was pretty impressive to me. Again, just my vantage point just did not envision even that number. Also, as I was saying earlier, just as Black consumers overall, not just limited to wine, but we are influencers of the culture and trendsetters. Cheryl Grace of Nielsen, which is known for its different rating systems and tracking, what are we watching, what are we buying, those types of data efforts. She states, our research shows that Black consumer choices have a cool factor that has created a halo effect, influencing not just consumers of color, but the mainstream as well. And I'm sure you can probably think of instances in your own in your own perspectives that you've seen that this has occurred. One funny one that was mentioned, I don't know what my son and I were talking about, but he was mentioning like nobody used to wear the acrylic nails with all the designs except us. And it was thought to be like, oh no, I don't like to use the word, but some people would say it was ghetto or it was kind of just, tacky. But now what do you see all over the place? Everyone's getting nails, all the designs, rhinestones blinged out, right? So that came, I would argue, really from our culture and has just expanded. And there's so many other examples I'm sure you could think of today. So just had a few examples of some folks who are representative of that. Kendrick Lamar, Cabby LeMay, Kai Cenat. And at first I just had these folks. So I was like, we can't just have men. So I added Beyonce as well as Rihanna. Really those two really speaking also to luxury, how we're not only just influencing what might have been thought of as urban culture, but now also luxury as well. So just a few more quick facts about Black consumers. We have $1.8 trillion of spending power. About almost 80% of Black alcohol consumers choose wine 1 to 3 times a month. So of those consumers who are Black and who drink any form of alcohol, they drink wine, they choose wine 1 to 3 times a month. And of those who don't drink wine, 15% responded that they don't drink wine because they had that previous negative retailer experience. So just reflecting back on the headlines and photos I showed a few slides back with the incident in Towson wine store, as well as the Napa Valley wine train, etc. So those are just the ones that we hear about, the ones that got coverage. You may have had your own experiences of either walking into a wine shop, visiting a winery, trying to order wine at a restaurant. Those types of experiences, when they're negative, they can really scar you and turn you away from that product category. So I have been collecting a bit more data on the consumer side instead of just focusing on entrepreneurs, expanding it to consumers, and just some real very anecdotal because the sample size is less than 50 and it's a combination of both US Black wine consumers and South African Black wine consumers. I can just share a few tidbits with you. So those who feel that they have a stronger sense of belonging in the wine industry, about half agreed, meaning half do not agree with that statement. Let's see. The wine industry is taking meaningful action to improve inclusion. Again, just about half straight down the middle. Those who sometimes, often, or always have noticed discrimination during their wine experiences. Again, that can be in the store, on a tour, visiting a winery, etc. About 60% agreed with that. About 43% said that they drink wine daily. And about 90% said they plan to drink the same amount of wine or more. All right. So the challenges are continuing, and I don't have to, explain this to you all. I'm sure you're living it, you're seeing it. Um, not only related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, but now we have WHO reports saying that even just there's no safe volume of alcohol to drink, right? So the WHO, the Surgeon General, they're all, coming forward and talking about the dangers of alcohol consumption, which of course includes wine. So that's another hurdle to overcome. All right. So I think this is my last question for you guys. So what do you think is the wine industry's most pressing issue in 2025 and beyond? There's a lot. There's climate change, wildfires, there's the health concerns, there are tariffs, there's shipping and distribution, there's diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. There is reaching new consumers. So if you had to identify one or more pressing, yes, tariffs is a big one. Yes, thank you, Cherie, for that. Yep. Anyone else want to add?
Well, if in the moment of people are thinking, I would just say also that besides the tariffs, which we're already seeing an increase, I do think that the the climate in which we are in, where there is a certain comfort level with excluding others who may have a different hue of skin or even
Mhm,
may be women or what have you, that is going to be a big challenge because there's now an almost tacit agreement
mhm,
that it's okay, you don't have
mhm,
to include
mhm,
those who don't look like you. I happened to go to an industry event. I'm not in the industry, but I was lucky enough to go with somebody for Italian wines.
mhm,
And when I walked into the event, 'cause I got there before my other colleagues, and I was the only person of color.
mhm, mhm.
The only, and I live, and this is Miami. So imagine
Wow.
you're at a wine event for Italian producers in the heart of Miami,
Mm,
and the only person of color, including Hispanic. And so then when a couple of my other colleagues went, so that we ended up being, there was about four of us in total. So that shows you that, it's still that diversity is lacking, and now
mhm,
there's just no real effort to
mhm,
hide it or
mhm,
to make it better. I mean, the looks that we got, and then when we were speaking about the different wines, and two of them are Psalms, they
mhm,
are deep in the industry. One works for a distributor here, and I was the only quote unquote novice there.
mhm,
And but even with them, there was a certain condescension, like, how could you actually know what you're talking about?
mhm,
And
mhm,
these folks have been in the industry forever. So, it's just now they don't have to hide it. So I think that's going to be a huge challenge. We're seeing more
yeah,
producers, as you mentioned. We're seeing um, organizations like the Hue Society, which are trying to introduce us even
mhm,
more and expand their reach. But we are facing some tough headwinds, in my
mhm.
personal opinion. So I'll be quiet now. I know time is far spent, but thank you. I just want to say thank you for the presentation. This was lovely. I do appreciate it, and I've learned a lot, and I appreciate the interaction as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for staying around, all of you. Thanks for hanging around. I know there was the delay, but thank you for your comment again. It's great to hear that insight. It's not great to hear that, but it's helpful to hear that insight from something that just recently occurred on the ground. To hear your experience, so that's unfortunate. Yeah, I feel frustrated, I guess would be the word I would use. It's because back around 2020, 21, 22, when there was all of this attention and interest and all of these consultants, including myself, more for myself, more on the marketing side, since I study marketing. Um, but these corporations, these organizations, the industry has been given the answers like, You want a game plan of what to do? Here you go. If you actually want to do the work, here it is. Like, here's the blueprint. So I feel like they just don't want to do it. Like, you would rather see your company fail than invite other people to the table, because I've told you that's what the answer is. And you'd rather just see your business continue to slump, continue to have layoffs, continue blah, 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 rather than just, you know, invite a few more folks, do a little bit of work. So I don't know what to tell you, but that gives us an opportunity again, for ourselves to build our own communities, to build our own markets, to meet our own needs, is what I would say. Okay, where do we go from here? So in the report, I do lay out a few different next steps, but you know, this year has upended everything. So I'm gonna need to kind of reevaluate and rethink a lot of things. But the answer is, with what we're seeing, in order for a business to continue and to thrive, you need consumers. Baby boomers are no longer going to be able to be that primary source of income, of revenue for these businesses. They're going to need to invite and encourage and welcome younger consumers. And guess what? The younger consumers are the most multicultural we've ever seen in the United States. So that means you're going to have to do the work of being inclusive. There's really no way around it that I can see. They might figure it out, I'm sure, rather than just do what they need to do. But yeah, I would just kind of end off by saying, you know, not just us as a Black community, but us as an entire industry, we're strongest when we come together. When we can have frank discussions, when we can just talk openly, when folks are open-minded, when they can really think about what the character and the values of their organization are, and you know, just really lean into those values. If you're not for us, that's fine. Let us move on to the next business that is for us, right? I really go by the adage that clear is kind. In my human connections, in business connections, as a consumer, I'd rather you just tell me who you are. Just tell me who you are and let me make a decision about how and if I want to engage with you. So there's all this hoopla right now about the American Eagle, Sydney Sweeney ad. They're telling you who they are. So now it's up to you. Do you want to engage with them? Do you want to support that? Or do you want to, you know, believe who they say they are and spend your dollars elsewhere? It's really up to you at this point, because as someone else mentioned earlier, the mask is off. They're telling you exactly who they are, who they want to invite in, who they are speaking to. We saw it with Target, lots of other brands. I think they're doing us a favor, really. If this is who you really are, then let me shift my dollars elsewhere. All right, I think that's it for me. Again, if you want to participate in the consumer survey, please do. If you have your own business in wine, please take the entrepreneur survey. I'll leave those up for a moment. And then thank you all again. You can reach me at the Wyne Belle. You can email me anytime. And if you're interested in the 2023 study, it's available at the link posted. Well, thank you all so much. Are there any questions or any thoughts that you want to add as we conclude?
I just want to thank you again, Dr. Bell. It was wonderful. And I would love to see some of your next steps with this study, because especially with the shifting climate, as we are getting deeper into Project 2025,
Mhm.
and what will the impact of a shrinking middle class do to the wine industry? Because it was just, to me, especially for the quote unquote Black middle class, which is shrinking
Mhm.
by the day. I would love to hear more about what that shift is going to do for our dollars. Because yes,
Yeah.
we can pour them in to Black owned, but our purchasing power is decreasing. Black unemployment is rising rapidly, and Black women, especially, who are a large part of
Yes.
the wine industry, are losing their jobs at an exponential rate. So,
Yeah.
would love to see some additional context on that as we get deeper into this regime.
Yeah.
If you plan to do any more research on that, but I'll definitely be following. I again enjoyed this so much, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Those are excellent points. Definitely areas to discover, areas to dig into more deeply. I think I wanted to start my next study in the spring, but I think it was just too much. It was every day was just like a whiplash of, okay, what's happening today? How do I respond? What do I need to get my passport out? What's happening? Right. So now that I know what it is, I've kind of been, I understand what's happening. Um,
Right.
Hopefully I'll be able to engage a little bit more on the research side. But thank you. Those are
Yeah.
great points of
Yes.
inspiration for me. Thank you.
Yes, and definitely take care of you. These are unprecedented times. I mean, our ancestors have seen this time before, but we are now living through it and having to adjust with our, the modernity of our existence. So it's the same, yet it's different, and it has unique challenges. So I'll be quiet now. I see John has his hand up. I'm going to get ready to drop, but such a pleasure again.
Thank
I
you.
will be connected with you on
Yes,
IG and look
yes.
forward to more from you as you are able. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Yes, John.
Hello, hello. Sorry I was late. I just want to chime in and say I'm here in Montgomery, Alabama, and as Sherry was saying about the ancestors, there was a post today that said about the ancestors and the cheer fighting in Montgomery. So when I saw the post, I was like, yeah, we need to celebrate here in Montgomery, have a
That's
wine
right.
fest. So anyway, sorry and meet you, but great topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Please celebrate for all of us who cannot be there on the scene. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, Cinco de Chero. I love that. Oh, thank you all so much. All right. Well, that is it for me. I'll stick around if there's any one-on-one questions. Other than that, thanks so much.